Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by Deputy Attorney General Eric Holder, Commander David O'Malley, and Ms. Sherilyn Birdsong.
Good afternoon and welcome to the White House. I have to say that I have before me a very distinguished group of people, and chief among those are all of my Washington, D.C. representative friends. It's great to see you all here. Many of you in this room have helped the Department of Justice and this administration in our fight against the scourge of hate crimes, and we're very grateful for your efforts and for your support. I also want to thank the President for his leadership on this issue. He's put the power of his office and his moral authority behind this effort, and we're all very indebted to you, Mr. President. Almost 2 years ago, our nation was shocked and horrified by the brutal murder of Matthew Shepard in Laramie, Wyoming. This young man was murdered because of his sexual orientation. Last year, over the 4th of July weekend, a young man linked to a white supremacist organization shot and killed 2 people because of the color of their skin. One victim was Ricky Birdsong, an African-American man who was doing nothing more than walking with his daughters near his home in Skokie, Illinois. Mr. Birdsong's wife is with us today. The other victim was Won Jun Yoon, a South Korean student at Indiana University who was shot outside of his church. Shortly after, and in another bias-related incident, another self-avowed white supremacist shot and killed a Filipino-American postal worker in Los Angeles. And he also shot and wounded several people at the North Valley Jewish Community Center, including several young children. Now, what these tragic events confirm is that hate is like a virus that still lurks in the body of our great nation. It can only be combated successfully when exposed and when dealt with, and we must deal with it. When attacks are initiated simply because the victims look different, practice a different faith, or have a different sexual orientation, America's most fundamental beliefs, our core values, are threatened. Such crimes represent an assault not just on the individual, but also on the community of which he or she is a part, and ultimately are an affront to the nation as a whole. And that is why a hate crime is different from other crimes not motivated by the same animus, and why we must take special steps to respond. America must finally be rid of this virus, and Congress must give us the tools to make this happen. As you know, for nearly 3 years, the Justice Department has had a comprehensive initiative against hate crimes, which has drawn on the collective talents of the U.S. attorneys around the country, our Civil Rights Division, FBI investigators, the Community Relations Service, grant officers, statistical analysts, and so many others. In a moment, the President will discuss 2 aspects of this problem on which we have been working: the underreporting of hate crime and our need for additional federal legislation. But as a career prosecutor, let me say just a few words about why the pending hate crime bill is so vitally important. The principal federal hate crime statute, which prohibits certain hate crimes committed on the basis of race, color, religion, or national origin, has 2 serious deficiencies. First, even in the most blatant cases of racial, ethnic, or religious violence, no federal jurisdiction exists unless the violence was committed because the victim engaged in one of 6 federally protected activities, such as voting or attending a public school. Now, this jurisdictional limitation has hampered our efforts, has caused us to lose cases that we should not have lost, and is frankly unnecessary and would be fixed by the pending legislation. Second, the current hate crime law provides no coverage whatsoever for violent hate crimes committed because of the victim's sexual orientation, gender, or disability. The data suggests that hate crimes based on sexual orientation are among the most prevalent and violent of bias-related crimes. Our laws should not, cannot ignore this reality, and the pending hate crimes bill would remedy this defect. Similarly, the legislation would allow us to pursue federally and to be of greater assistance to our state partners where criminal action is motivated by a person's gender or disability. And I would ask those who oppose the legislation, why are they unwilling to extend this needed protection to people who are nothing more nor less than American citizens? Now, we are joined here today on the dais by two people who can express more personally than I the importance of our fight against hate crimes. We will hear first from David O'Malley, the commander of the Detective Division at the Laramie, Wyoming Police Department. Commander O'Malley investigated the Matthew Shepard case, and he has become a leading voice and valuable ally in the fight for new hate crime legislation. I am pleased to introduce Commander O'Malley.
It's a great honor to have the opportunity to address you all here today. On October the 6th of 1998, a young man named Matthew Shepard was a student at the University of Wyoming. He was a loving son, brother, and a faithful friend. Matt was full of vitality and full of dreams and goals for his future. On October the 7th of 1998, those dreams and those goals were crushed at the hands of Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson. On October the 6th of 1998, I too had the same belief as many people that all crime is hate crime. By October the 7th of 1998, I was thrust into a situation that I had to reevaluate myself and my attitudes towards what constitutes a hate crime and the profound impact that they have on everyone around them. A segment of our country still believes that Matt's death may have been a robbery gone wrong. By Aaron McKinney's own statement, Matthew gave up his wallet after only being struck one time. You see, Matt wasn't a real imposing sort. He stood 5 foot 2 inches tall. He weighed 105 pounds. The young man that discovered him tied to a fence in a field east of Laramie, and the first deputy who arrived on a scene thought that he was a young child. Matthew gave up his wallet after only being hit one time. What followed was a torturous ride through hell, to be tied to a fence, beaten, terrorized, and maimed by two men filled with hate. Robbery as a motive was exhausted early in that contact. It was the hatred that carried it on to finality. I call on the House to give local law enforcement agencies the tools they need to properly investigate and prosecute hate crimes. Yes, justice was served in the Shepard investigation, but the Albany County Sheriff's Department did have to furlough 5 deputies because of the costs associated with the investigation and the prosecution of Henderson and McKinney. If the Local Law Enforcement Enhancement Act were passed, this may never have happened. In my job as a police commander, as a police officer, there is nothing more satisfying and important to me than to be able to look into the eyes of family members of victims and say, we are doing all that we can do to help you in this situation. When it comes to the families of hate crime victims, Congress needs to also be able to look these people in the eyes and to honestly say it is doing all that it can. Congress has the opportunity to do that now. As a member of local law enforcement who has seen the need for an enhanced federal hate crimes bill, I urge the House to pass the hate crime language the Senate passed this summer. Law enforcement officials throughout the country need Congress to do their jobs in order to help us do ours. If we work together, we can mount a significant and effective response to crimes motivated by hatred. And now I would like to introduce Sherilyn Birdsong.
Good afternoon. It is an honor and a privilege for me to be here in the White House today. My story is that on July 2nd, 1999, my husband Ricky, of nearly 20 years, was fatally shot as he was jogging with our two youngest children 1 block from our home. He was the target of a 21-year-old white supremacist because of his race and the color of his skin. In an instant, my experience of the American dream became an American nightmare. Unfortunately, the tragedy that my family and I endured is becoming the American way. We are a diverse country. That means that no one is immune to the broad-based harm of such acts of hate. Hate crimes are evil. If we allow this evil to spread, I believe the negative impact will rock the very foundation of our society. So why am I here today? It has been said that the only thing necessary for the spread of evil is for good people to do nothing. Our elected legislators of this great nation today have an historic opportunity and responsibility to do good by including hate crimes legislation as part of the Department of Defense authorization bill. This will communicate the message that our government values human life. I pray that we take advantage of this opportunity. Missed opportunities bear a cost. In this case, the cost is precious lives. I want to personally thank President Clinton and all of the senators and representatives who support hate crimes legislation. And I am hoping for a great celebration when it is passed. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce our leader of this great nation, President Bill Clinton.
Mr. Holder, thank you for your leadership. Commander O'Malley, thank you for coming back and for being the embodiment of someone who has changed his position on this and being courageous enough to say so. And Mrs. Birdsong, I cannot even imagine the courage it must take for you to have made this journey from your home, to stand up in front of us, to say what you have said. I thank your pastor for joining you here, and I think I speak for all of us and for all Americans. We thank you for trying to turn your pain into a positive gain for America. We thank you. I'd like to thank Justin Dart and Mary Frances Berry and so many other advocates of human rights and civil rights for being in this room today. And I would like to thank the members of the Interfaith Alliance who are here, and of course the members of our DC City Council. Many members of Congress wanted to be here, but they are actually voting now, and in the House they're voting on this, on amendments to this very proposal. So we're here at a very important time. The first ever vote on comprehensive hate crimes legislation is scheduled in the House of Representatives for later today, after the amendments have been dealt with. That would enable us to clear the last legislative hurdle to final passage of hate crimes. In June, with the Vice President standing watch in case a tie had to be broken, the Senate passed a strong bipartisan hate crimes bill. I was very moved by many of the things that were said there, but I want to say a special word of thanks publicly to Senator Gordon Smith from Oregon, an evangelical Christian Republican, for the speech that he gave on that occasion, reminding us that this is not a partisan issue. I hope the House will follow suit. As I have said many times over the last couple of years, it is for me a sad and painful irony that at the beginning of a new century I have done so much to try to fill with opportunity for the American people and to bring full of hope to the rest of the world. With all the modern gadgets we enjoy, we are still bedeviled by mankind's oldest failing, the fear of the other, which so quickly can lead to distrust, then to dehumanization, then to the kind of violence that ended the lives of Matthew Shepard and Ricky Birdsong far, far before their time. We may not ever fully conquer the disease that seems to afflict human hearts everywhere, the compelling need to define ourselves up by defining someone else down. But at least we can do more to make sure that no one in our country is violated simply because of who they are. That's why we're here today. I would also like to point out that there is a connection between the two ways that throughout history, and if you just look at the last century, hate crimes have manifested themselves. Here we talk about sad people twisted inside who somehow felt they could fill a hole in their own lives by taking the lives of other people away. People who had somehow been convinced that they were so superior to other people they could shoot at them, kill them. What possessed that person in California to shoot at all those little kids walking into the Jewish community school? I saw one person said that when he killed a Filipino postal worker, he thought he'd had a double success. He'd killed an Asian and a federal employee. What makes people think that way? There are all kinds of explanations, but we know that it's profoundly wrong to believe that you can ever lift yourself up by putting someone else down. And the point I want to make just briefly is that it's not very far from there to the awful examples we've seen in our time of political leaders who try to get one group of people in the majority in a country to blame all their problems on another group of people in a minority. And then you have a Holocaust, or you have a Kosovo where a whole country is just flushed out. And so this is very important. It is just not true that hate crimes are like other crimes. It is not even true that every crime is a hate crime. And that is fundamentally at the heart of this debate. We had the first ever conference at the White House on this 3 years ago. Since then, we've increased the number of federal agents working on these cases, prosecuted successfully a number of quite serious ones, formed local hate crimes groups with local U.S. attorneys' offices around the nation, and worked with more and more police officers to identify the signs of hate crimes. This coming year, one of the things in our budget I hope the Congress will adopt involves funds for extensive training for local law enforcement officials in this area. But we have to do more. The Deputy Attorney General told you quite eloquently, precisely, and clearly why we need a federal hate crimes law that allows the Justice Department to do so much more than it can now. Commander O'Malley told you the devastating financial consequences that can come to local law enforcement from simply trying to do the right thing without the necessary federal support. But underneath it all, and far more important than everything else, are the stories. The life young Matthew Shepard had, and the one he might have had. The wonderful life Ricky Birdsong had, and the one he might have had. Last year, or in 1998, that's the last year we have figures, there were, listen to this, 7,755 reported hate crimes. Nearly one every hour of every day. More importantly, we know this is only the tip of the iceberg. Today we have new evidence that confirms what many have long suspected, and that is that hate crimes are underreported. A survey conducted by Northeastern University found that as many as 6,000 law enforcement agencies may have encountered hate crimes over the past year, but failed to report them to the FBI. We also learned that 85% of law enforcement officers responding to the survey agree with Commander O'Malley's belief that hate-motivated crimes are more serious than similar crimes not motivated by bias. That's why I'm directing the Justice Department today to work with local authorities to develop a plan within 120 days to make sure we report all hate crimes, so we'll know what the scope of the challenge is. It will examine a number of strategies from pilot programs in states suspected of underreporting to increasing training to help local officials identify such crimes. This is all very important, but only Congress can do what really should be done here. That's why the House must vote yes on the hate crimes legislation offered by Congressman Conyers today, and yes on sending me the final hate crimes legislation before they adjourn for the year. Both yeses are important. Thank you. I also ask Congress to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act before it's too late so that we can continue to build on its success. You know, over the last several decades, over and over again, when it came down to protecting the lives of innocent Americans, Congress has been willing to take bipartisan action to do the right thing. I hope and believe it will do nothing less with hate crimes legislation and the Violence Against Women Act. Let me just close with this. One of the cruelest aspects of the systematic hate crimes that were perpetrated by the Nazis is their attempt to prove that somehow it was justified by science, by some sort of innate superiority. One of the happiest aspects of most recent scientific developments in biology is that we can now scientifically confirm what faiths have always taught, that the most important fact of our common existence on this earth is our common humanity. The Human Genome Research Project has documented that we are genetically 99.9% the same. Furthermore, that the differences among people within the same ethnic or racial groups are greater than the genetic differences between profiles of different racial groups. Now, this is a stunning thing. In other words, this is not an affair of the body, it is an affair of the heart, of the spirit. It is, therefore, an even more dangerous kind of infection. I don't think any of us believe we can ever root it out just by punishing people. But the most important thing is that we do have the tools we need to take a strong stand before these things spread even wider. That's what Sherilyn said, and that's why she came. We've got a chance here to reaffirm America at its best, and I hope we can do it. Because the most important thing if we want to make the most of all this modern, wondrous economy we have, is to get rid of our oldest demons and build one America. Thank you very much.